I like to call Raphael Raph, and I hope he's cool with that. So I'm gonna rock with that. Thanks, Raph. All right, Raph. Raph has always been fascinated about people's brains, like myself. Mostly because since he was a child, he was convinced everyone he met must have brain damage. Why else would they behave the way they do? Which is valid. A little experience and maturity taught him that we all have our moments, even Raphael. And that further fascinated him and caused him to do a deep dive into what makes us tick. With a degree in philosophy and 3 years of energy medicine and mystery school under his belt, he dug deep into his trauma filled childhood and came out with insights and information that allowed him to begin healing himself. Raphael is passionate about sharing the brainwave technologies he works with every day and shows us how our brainwaves shape our experience. The next step is to learn how we can shape our brain waves, and that's what he's here to give us. So I'm really excited about this, Raf. The mic is yours, man. Let me just get you pinned up here, and I'm super excited for this, brother. Boom.
So I want to start by saying, everyone, thank all of your brains for getting you here today. Your brains woke you up. Your brains are beating your heart. Your brains are doing all the automatic things that cause you to be you. Okay? It's super important to know that everything in this experience that we're in is electricity and frequency, including us. And our very experiences, everything that we know and see and feel is an electrical pattern. Your heart is an electrical organ. If there were no electricity in your heart, you would just drop to the floor. That's what death is. That's, when there's no longer any electrical activity in the body. We are animated by electricity, and all of our perceptions and everything that we see and do are brought about by the brainwave patterns that we all have. Now, I started out, I didn't know whether I should put that brain dead thing in there, for the intro, but brain damage thing. We all have brain damage, no doubt about it, okay? Because we all start out as these beautiful, perfect little beings that come into the world clean slates. And then the world just starts dumping crap on us. And just like our DNA in our body has a perfect coding for how our arms are supposed to look and how our eye color is supposed to be and all of the health attributes that make us who we are, all of the sins of the world, diet, institutions, parents, everything in the world that assaults us every day changes what that formula is and how it expresses itself. And that's what healing is. Healing is trying to return to that basic blueprint of what we were destined to be. Your body has the ability to do it. If you cut yourself, you bleed, and then you scab over and you heal. Your brain has the same capability. A lot of people have given away their power to doctors and drug companies and all these other organizations to say, please heal me, because they feel like they can't do it for themselves. And there are some people that have had terrible, terrible, terrible physical traumas, life traumas that do need help. And those people, those interventions can maybe create a space for that healing to begin to occur, a space so that their own brain can just kind of do a reset and then start trying to heal on its own. So there are spaces for them, and I am not against science. I mean, science is what makes the technology that I am able to deliver possible. So it's very important to note that there's a place for everything, and nothing I'm talking about today says don't go to a doctor. I don't say don't take any medications. What I say is investigate everything you can do for yourself first. Eliminate all of the things that you can control, and then look outside yourself. And so from that, we'll get started. So the system that I use is called Neuro Optimal. It is a dynamical neurofeedback system. And it basically works on the premise that the brain is a constantly changing, constantly evolving, constantly processing system. What does that sound like? Does it sound like a computer? Right? It's kind of a computer. Our brain is actually the most sophisticated computer in the universe. And it has more connections than there are stars in the sky. And if you want to get metaphysical, we can do that another time, but there's a lot of correlations to the way the universe is set up, the way the Milky Way is set up, the way our brains are set up. You can look up images of what patterns exist in all of these things, and it's amazing how they mirror each other. But the important point that I want to bring up here is that it is a computer. It's a computer that runs processes that beat our hearts, that make our lungs take in air, that are able to allow our eyes to work and ears to work, and we can move. I couldn't do this if my brain wasn't working properly, okay? So let's imagine you have a computer. We're gonna go to the computer analogy here. And your computer gets a virus. Immediately, your computer starts doing all kinds of crazy things. It starts opening all these different windows. You can't control the keyboard anymore. All of these really wacky things start to happen. Now, in that state, the computer does not know at that moment that it has a virus. It's just running commands that it's being given by the virus. It's just doing what that new program is telling it to do. And unless you install some sort of software, like anti-malware is what it's called, the computer won't have the ability to recognize that something is going on that's not normal. It'll just keep doing what it's doing. There has to be an intervention, okay? Intervention is what we're talking about here. Different ways to access your brain, show it what it's doing, and be able to manipulate those brainwave states to get them back into more of a normal range. Now, that was the extreme case. Suppose you're using your computer and you're on Chrome, you're on your browser, and you open a tab. And then you open another tab, and then that takes you to another tab. And next thing you know, you have 100 tabs open on your browser, okay? What starts to happen to your computer? It slows down, things don't react as quickly, the fan starts going, it's heating up, right? Why? Because there's so many different processes going. It's trying to run all these different pages at the same time. That is exactly what's going on in our brains, because what happens is that from the moment that we're a little tiny child, basically from when, you know what, I'm probably not even gonna end up using this, you watch. From the moment you're a baby, you start getting programs inserted to you. I will talk about brainwave states because those are important, but when you're a baby, you're in what's known as delta. Delta is the same brainwave frequency as when you're sleeping, when you're in deep sleep. So, you see babies, they have that kind of that dreamy look when they look around, like everything's like, they look slowly and, that's delta. It's a beautiful place to be, okay? When you're in delta, you're just kind of, being dreamily along. There's nothing really going in that beginning part, okay? You're just kind of, floating along. Immediately after that period, your brain turns on, something happens, and you go into a state known as theta, okay? Theta is the same state that you're in when you're in between sleep and waking up. Like when you're falling asleep and you solve world hunger, like you get the idea and you're like, I gotta write this down, like something comes to you and then you wake up and it's gone. That's theta. That's where, your brain is open to, some people call it the Akashic record. They can access these really kind of global wisdoms or wisdoms outside of our universe. And we spend from basically that, after that infant delta period up until 7 years old in theta. Now, theta is also known as hypnotic trance. And what happens in a hypnotic trance? You're very suggestible. Do you ever see the hypnotists on TV that get people to do all kinds of crazy things when they put them under, they cluck like chickens and, they do all that kind of crazy stuff. Well, that's because they're in a suggestible state and they are running whatever program is introduced to them. Now, people in those comedy hypnotist programs, they're doing it because they want the experience, they're open to it, because it is possible to go into a hypnotic trance and not run whatever programs give you once you're an adult. But when you're a child and those programs are going in while your brain is forming, you don't have the ability to make that choice. So if as a child, you get the experience of, I don't see you, I don't hear you, what you say doesn't matter, you're a bad child. You have to work really hard or you're not going to be anybody. Don't go there. Those people are bad. Those people will hurt you. These colored people are not as good as these colored people. All of these things that go in when we're very young become part of our basic programming. And that's all right back here in the lower brain. And I think this is a good time to talk about the different three brains that we have. We have the reptile brain, we have the limbic brain, and then we have the forebrain. The reptile brain is the one that developed first. It's what caused us to start evolving out of the animal stage that we were in. And that is what runs survival. So anything that has to do with eating, sleeping, having sex, killing or being killed is all governed by the reptile brain. And really, at its core, when we meet people, we are figuring out, can I sleep with this person? Will this person try to kill me? Should I kill this person? Are they safe? Or can I eat it? That's everything that's going on in the lower brain. So that's when we were like at our first level of development. Now, consciousness started to come in, and that second limbic brain came in. That's when mommies started to realize that their babies were their babies and they were capable of loving it. Like that maternal instinct, and even animals have some of this, right? You can see that, primates, chimps, orangutans, they carry their babies with them, and they have this instinctual love, this instinctual protective feeling, and they will kill anything that tries to get theirs, right? Will kill anything that tries to get between them and their baby. That's the limbic brain. That's the emotionally driven brain. And that's what keeps us alive beyond the most basic functions. A lot of people live in that brain, okay? And they're good people. They're good people. They love their families. They want to try to do good things because it's an emotional brain. It's not an evil place to be. But the problem is, if you're being driven by those emotional drives, if your emotions are running the show all the time, you never think about what you're doing. You always just react, which is why every insult is a threat to your very existence. So when that person cuts you off in a car, what happens? Right? The bear comes out. Because why? If you're living in that emotional brain, there is no way to differentiate a real threat to your life to a perceived threat to your life. Because now we live in a world where there's not a saber-toothed tiger chasing us, trying to eat us anymore. We live in a world where our identity is our life. And anything that threatens our identity or tries to hurt who we think we are, or our perception of ourselves, or what we think we deserve as respect, can have the same effect. Your heart racing, your brain just shutting off, fight, flight, running away, freeze if you don't know what to do. And then there's a fourth one, which is fawning, which is a little bit more like pleading. So if the freezing doesn't work and whatever's want to try to kill you is still trying to kill you, you say, please, please, please don't. And that's where actually people pleasing comes from. People pleasing is a response that if killing it doesn't work, running away from it doesn't work, acting like you're dead doesn't work, then you try to suck up to it and maybe it won't kill you, And that's why people pleasing people get really angry, because they always have this undercurrent of, I'm going to die if I don't do this, if I don't take care of everybody around me and make everybody around me happy. So it always all goes back to survival. Now, as we developed, this front part of our brain started to develop, and we started to be able to cognate, to think. Kristen, I'm just going to ask you, let me know when we're getting low on time. Okay, so just, So thinking allows us to put a pause in between what we're instinctually wanting to do and what we actually do, okay? And that's what school is supposed to do. That's what, good school that doesn't traumatize you, okay? That's what parents are supposed to do. Good parents that don't traumatize you. Any institutions, anything that's around as a child, okay, has the capacity to help us grow that capacity to deal with what's coming at us in the world in a constructive way or to react to it in an emotional way, okay? And that's where we're living when it comes into these brain waves. You can actually map everything that all of us experience and feel on a brainwave chart every second of the day. It's always changing. And it really looks like a dance. I mean, has anyone ever seen an EKG, like when somebody goes to the doctor and they put all the electrodes on the heart and then it's just all the squiggles of all the, Well, EEG is the same thing for your brain, okay? And the crazy thing is that every experience that we have, and I'll go back to what I said earlier, is an electrical event. So let's start at the most basic, okay? Death, okay? When they say someone is brain dead and they call a code in the hospital, that's a flat line. There's no voltage. There's nothing that can be read, okay? That's the lowest level of what a human can exist at, is death. I mean, they're no longer there, okay? But on the other side of that, at the way top, is what's called seizure. Seizure, the definition of seizure is uncontrolled electrical activity in the brain that causes loss of ability to manage functions, breathing, muscle control. You see people, their head, they get solid block or they start flailing wildly. That's too much electrical activity in the brain. And everything in between that dead baseline and that seizure is our experience. That's where we live. We live in there. And it really is a miracle. I mean, there are actually patterns for happy. There's a pattern for love. There's a brain pattern for people that see non-physical beings. They can actually look at somebody's brain and tell that this person can see non-physical beings. There was a guy, Dr. James Hart. He runs the Biocybernaut Institute, which is where Tony Robbins goes for his neurofeedback. It's $20,000 for a week. And he was doing training for Navy SEALs. And a lot of organizations use neurotraining and brain training for peak performance, because not only can it heal, but if you start in a good place, it can cause you, as Joe Dispenza says, to become superhuman. You can train your brain just like any other muscle in your body. Okay, so he's doing this Navy SEAL training, and he's doing one-on-ones with all of the individual Navy SEALs, showing them their brain patterns and then helping them to work in areas that they want to improve, whether it's, accuracy on the firing line or reaction time if they're flying jets. All of these things they can do through simulations and through neurofeedback. And he has one of the guys in the room, and this guy is gigantic. He's like tatted everywhere. His arms are like my legs. He's just sitting there looking at him. And Dr. Hart's like, I have something to tell you. He says, well, I really have something to ask you. And he's a little intimidated by this guy. And the guy's like, yeah. He says, do you see beings that other people don't see? And the guy's face just dropped. He was like, what? He goes, who told you that? I only told one person that. I'll kill the son of a gun. Like he went nuts because this could not get out. It could not get out that this guy, who's this big, burly Navy SEAL, sees dead people, sees ghosts, sees guides. Well, he did. He admitted it to him. He goes, yeah, ever since I was a little kid, when I was playing baseball, and I didn't know how to do the swing, there was this little kid that came to me, and he showed me how to swing a baseball bat right. And he stayed my friend, like my whole life. And he's guided me, and he's kept me alive. Like in war situations, he's told me, like, don't go down that path. And other guys did and got killed. Sorry, sometimes these stories, they kind of get to you. Really? Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So brainwave patterns are everything. Brainwaves rule, So getting to what I do, all right? Your brain is locked inside your skull. 20 minutes? 20 minutes left?
Yeah, if you want to take questions.
Okay, yeah, okay, good. Wow, that's more than I thought. Good, all right. So your brain's locked inside your skull. It's dark and it can't see anything, even with my no hair. There's a ton of protection. The scalp is super thick, okay? And the only inputs your brain gets are secondhand. Your brain does not know what's out there. It's relying on what your eyes tell it. And it's translating signals that it receives. It relies on what your ears tell it. And again, it's relying on those signals that it receives. And the translation for those signals is talk to us. So there's an interesting story. When the Pilgrims first arrived in America, the Native Americans even though the Nina, Pinta, and no, that was Columbus. When Columbus first came, it was Columbus. Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria, they're all on the horizon. And the Native Americans are standing looking out there, and they couldn't see the boats. They literally couldn't see them because they didn't have any concept for boat. So they didn't have a framework to create the image that was in front of them. The shaman had to literally come, and because he saw, he knew there's trouble coming, you know, and he went out there and he pointed to the horizon. He started describing what they should see. And as he was describing these boats, the natives could see them. And like they appeared. And that really is a metaphor for how our brain works. Until it is described to us what we're supposed to see, we don't know what to see. We don't know what we're seeing. And that's a hard concept to grasp. So I'll try to rephrase it. Language, words, everything that we're taught, the way we speak, it's all taught to us. It's the way we communicate each other. We all agree on what our language is, what words mean, and that's what allows for everybody to be able to say something and you understand what I'm saying, okay? Everything communicates in a language. Your eyes have a language, the optical language that goes through the optical nerve. Your ears have a language, the little vibrations, those tiny little bones in your ear, which God, I cannot imagine how those things work. It's crazy, that allow us to be able to hear, have a language that gets translated in the brain. Right? That's the experience that the brain receives. If there's a problem with the processing, you can get all kinds of issues with auditory issues, visual issues. You know, there's different things that happen, and some of those things require medical interventions. Some of those things can be cleared up with neurofeedback. And the reason I'm saying that is that training your brain is working on your nervous system, on your central nervous system, because your entire spinal cord and your brain is linked. And believe it or not, the back of your eyes, not your actual eyes, but the optical nerve in the back of your eyes is actually a part of your brain, the only part of your brain that is not fully encased in your skull. It's part of your brain that sticks out of the skull. So, where was I going with that? So the signals have to be interpreted and then you can act on them. So with neurofeedback, we provide you with a vehicle for being able to take these signals and use them better. And the way we do that is by showing the brain activity back to the brain. That's why it's called feedback. So how does it work? All right, so there's a computer, much like this one. It's connected to a box which is called a BCI, brain computer interface, which has wires coming out of it. And at the end of the wires, there are these little sterling silver tipped sensors. And you clip them onto your ears at the top. One goes on your earlobe, and then two of them go right here on the top of your scalp. Okay? And what those do is they send the signals coming off your scalp to the BCI, brain-computer interface, where they need to be amplified, because we're talking millionths of volts, like barely noticeable potentials here at the skin level. So they have to be amplified for the computer to be able to do it. Once they're inside the computer now starts running them through its program and presenting it back to the brain. So how does that happen? How does the feedback happen? How does the brain get the information back? Well, you put headphones in and you watch a screen. And what's happening is you're listening to this really beautiful music. And while your brain activity is being read, every time what we call a shift or a storm is happening, where your brain is kind of moving from one state to another quickly and maybe unexpectedly, every time that happens, you get feedback through your headphones. It sounds like a scratchy record. So it's like, you go like this, what happened? It's using what's known as the orient response. So if you're out hiking in the woods and you hear a stick break behind you, what do? You freeze, and then you look around. That's the orient response. That's what happens in neurofeedback. The music is playing, la, 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 la. You're in a peaceful state looking at the screen, the beautiful fractals showing up in front of you. And then you're in the headphones and your brain goes, what just happened? And our brain has the intelligence of knowing with repeated training that that feedback it just got through the headphones is because of something it just did. Right? Now, it doesn't mean it did something good or bad or anything in particular. It just means that it made a shift. Your brain was chugging along in one particular pattern, and then it shifted. So what happened? Your brain has the ability to know what that is. As it's presented with this information, it's going to realize that every time it gets a skip at a particular time when the brain is shifting, that, oh, that's a memory of whatever. Maybe it's a good memory, maybe it's a bad memory, but your brain has the ability to make a choice at that point to say, does that thing that just happened that triggered the feedback, the neurofeedback, serve me? Is this something I want to do again? Is this a pattern that benefits me, or is this a pattern that holds me back? I mean, we have all these programs running all the time. I have programs still, even after hundreds of sessions of neurofeedback running in my head from when I was a little kid. And that's what the neurofeedback picks up on. So you could be going along, having a great time, having dinner with your friends. Somewhere in the back of your head in here, there's that bully that pushed you around in school, still taking up real estate in your brain. And it may not be affecting what you're doing in the moment, but it's another, remember I mentioned the tabs in the browser? It's another tab that's open in your browser. So imagine you've had a lifetime of all these memories that are always running in your brain that are just building up, building up, building up, and making your brain shift, shift, shift. You're always shifting. I liken it to driving with 1 foot full on the brake and 1 foot full on the accelerator, because you want to go, you want to stop. You want to go, you want to stop. What happens? You wear out both. You wear out the motor, you wear out the brake. And that's what happens to us as we get older. When we're young, we have a ton of energy. We can kill the world because the hormones are going, and we can deal with all of that kind of craziness in our brain. But I'm getting up there now. I'm in my mid-50s, and I just don't have the energy for it anymore. And that's what led me to this process in the first place. I started to feel like at the end of my experience at the energy medicine school I was in, that there was, even though I had done so much healing, and I had done so much work on myself and discovered so many things, that there were still things that I couldn't access, that there were still things in me that I didn't have full control over. And this is the same thing for anybody that goes to see a psychotherapist, anybody that takes medications, anybody with ADD, anxiety, PTSD, complex PTSD, all of the things that they've done, whether it's an intervention that's medical, drugs, or therapeutic therapy, can only take you so far and will help you get to a place that might be livable, but are you wanting to go further? Do you want to take your development further from that point? And I did. I wanted to go further. I wanted to see what I was capable of. And when I started neuro training, it blew me away. The word finding came more quickly. The ability to read something and having it stick, my reading comprehension improved incredibly. I was able to go back to school and get the degree that I never finished when I was 18 years old, because I had this ADD brain and no impulse control. So I wanted to just drink and chase girls and do all that stuff during college time. So I just had to withdraw from all my classes, which was a big shame that I carried in my life for a very long time, that I never completed that. So yeah, Joe Dispenza says it, we can become superhuman. And through brain training, you can bring a brain that has a lot of deficiencies up to what's normal. And then once you've reached that point, there's no limit to where you can take it. And I think there, I'm going to open it up to questions for everybody that's out there or here in the room. We have a nice group in the room, and I'm ready to answer them.
Wow. Raph, my man. Holy cow, dude. Sometimes you know somebody, and then they do a presentation like this, and now I know you even more, man, and my mind is blown. I'm very, 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 very grateful to be in your presence and consider you a friend and a brother. So unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. So check it out. I actually have a little bit of like a comment slash question. So you touched on something that really is like almost an instinctual knowing inside me, that we have like like you said, a computer that's open for more antennas. It's like the back of a computer that has multiple places you can plug into. And I feel like we haven't plugged into nearly a fraction of those. So essentially what I'm gathering from what you're saying is that we can actually open up new antennas. So to your point, I guess my question is that you talked about the person that could see entities and spirits. I believe that people have that ability to open those antennas in their brain, all people. Is that something, am I accurate in thinking that we have the, I mean, yeah.
We all have the same hardware, absolutely. And, you know, it's all a matter of what you're able to do with the hardware you have. We're all receivers. Our brain is not what creates us. It's what receives what we are. Your brain is an antenna. And just like you can tune your radio in your car to country radio or rock and roll or talk radio, those are all different frequencies. And believe it or not, radio frequencies are not sound. Radio frequencies are light frequencies that get translated inside a radio, and then sound comes out. So everything is light. So when you change that tuning, yeah, you can tap into anything.
See, that's so beautiful, because you literally, what you're doing is I think what has been missing in the human experience is our manual, our owner's manual. And this is a big piece of the human owner's manual. Your number one computer system, your hardware system, the driver that moves the parts. Like, you're basically giving people an owner's manual to that by allowing them to tap in. And that's, to me, huge. I'm so grateful for our whole group to get to experience this, man. Unbelievable. I see another question coming from Kyle, so I'm going to let Kyle hop in. I'm glad.
I want to answer you one more part of your question, though.
Hit it.
So it's not so much as an owner's manual as it is a mirror, because we have all the intelligence in us. We have the owner's manual. It's just that we don't see it. We don't allow ourselves to see it because we're running so much other crap all the time. And when we clear ourselves to what's there, the owner's manual is there for us. It's inside us. It's our blueprint for who we are.
Oh my God, man. It's almost just like what you talked about with the Indians not being able to see the boats. The boats were there. It wasn't that they weren't there. It's just that their system hadn't been upgraded yet to be able to get the visual pieces, the visual data to say, oh, okay, boat. So yeah, man. Wow. That's epic. And I think that that's really empowering for people, or a lot of people. So unbelievable, brother. I'm going to let Kyle ask his question, because I could probably talk to you about this forever, man. All right, here we go.
Hey, what's up, Raf? You killed it, man.
Kyle, miss you, brother.
Hey, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Yeah, dude, great presentation. I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience with Neuro Optimal. As you know, it was a little wild. So I hooked up to the Neuro Optimal, and the first thing that happened, probably like a few minutes in, was I started feeling like ecstatic bliss. And I was in a restaurant with you and somebody else who I was meeting for the first time. And I started feeling connected to everybody in the whole place. And it just felt euphoric. So I was like completely harmonizing my system. And then all of a sudden what happened was I started harmonizing to the person next to me that was also wearing Neuro Optimal. And we had like this crazy experience where we almost became one organism. And you saw what happened after that. It was truly unbelievable. So I am somebody who's I couldn't speak highly enough about Neuro Optimal. I'm just curious if you could explain a little bit about what happened in that moment and how it makes us feel more connected. Like, is there an association with brainwaves and our connectedness?
Absolutely. Just like you and others in the group are learning heart coherence through the Heart Math Institute. Everything is electrical signals. All of our fields are electrical. And, you know, let's use the example of when you go to a football game up in Foxborough, okay? What happens to the energy in that stadium when something great happens? It just gets amped all the way up. Why? Because everybody is in coherence, or at least the majority. I mean, there are fans from both sides there, but if you're in Foxborough, they're probably Patriots fans. And so that gets amped up. Or, you know, if one of the players makes a mistake and, you know, something happens that's not good for the team, everything goes down and it's amplified. What happens at concerts when you go and you have this experience of being with thousands of other people and Sting is up there and like everybody's just swaying and crying and just feeling the emotion. It's coherence. And it doesn't matter whether it's your brain or your heart that's in that coherence, or whether it's 10,000 people or 2 people. Once you reach a point where you're in a similar field and you're open, there's all kinds of possibility. Not to get religious, but Jesus said, when 2 or more of you are gathered in my name. That's what he meant. We're about being together and connected. And all of these things that make us separate, all of these defense mechanisms that are supposed to be keeping us alive, but as we become more evolved, just get in our way, just get in the way of that. It's about connection, Kyle. And you experience connection at the deepest and simplest level.
My goodness. Wow.
And we might have lost Kyle.
I don't know. We might have. And if we did, no, I still see him. He's still here.
Okay.
I know he's got his boys. That's why Kyle was unable to make it today. One of his boys was feeling a little under the weather. So, but dude, that was a great way to like coalesce this, because for me, I think about the movie Avatar, and when they're all in that, if anybody's ever seen that movie, there's a point where they all get together and they're hand in hand circled around their tree of life, their deity basically. And they're using their collective energy to basically, it's like an amplifier. It's like we're all little capacitors, really. I mean, and when you explained it right out the jump of the beginning of your presentation as the electrical energy in the heart. And if there is no electrical energy in the heart, then see ya, it's over. So basically we are all little capacitors of energy. And if we all click in and link into one another, and now we're discovering more and more with, I'm sure with these like EEGs, we can actually see that not only do we link when we touch, but we can link neurologically too, as in with what happened with Kyle. So our potentialities of just the knowledge, like you said, just giving people the framework to understand this stuff, in turn seems to open up the antenna in the brain, allowing this information to land and be more applicable in real life. So it's super cool, man. I mean, it's super cool. It's like next level humanism, I guess, you know?
It's the evolution of our species, absolutely. Yeah. We're going to be able to, at some point, once we all get our central nervous systems regulated, we're going to be able to have a peaceful world someday. Unfortunately, most of the people that are running the world right now are extremely dysregulated. You know, they got to the power that they're at using all those primal reptile brain tools. That's who we choose to lead us, unfortunately, because we don't look for the smartest voice in the room. We look for the loudest. And just recently, I mean, there was a change because we saw what that brought us, and I don't mean to get political, but you know, we're trying to modulate, like the pendulum has to swing in either direction so that we fall at some point into a beautiful place of peace. Oh, Kristen has a question. Yeah, come on over and ask it. Come and ask her right here. I'm tired of being up here alone. I want a lovely companion. Hello, yay.
So my question for Raf is really in regards to the brain and addiction, because it's kind of like this collective acceptance that addiction is like a brain disease. And once you have it, you can't really, there's not a lot you can do about it. But with the introduction of this new technology, I think that could be like a really big, like a big shift for that whole collective. And I think we can see that our world has a massive collective of addicts. So can you speak to the potential benefits of something like Neuro Optimal or even the light for addiction?
Absolutely. So my definition of addiction is any behavior that we do that takes us out of the moment so that we don't have to feel what we're really feeling. Okay. And there's all kinds of addictions. You know, there's unacceptable addictions like drugs and, you know, illegal drugs, or what they call illegal drugs, sexual addictions, alcohol addictions, things that kind of, you know, blow people's lives up in an obvious way. I mean, heroin is a horrible drug that ruins a lot of lives, but I've known a couple of people that were addicted to heroin. And if you knew what happened to these people in their lives, I might be doing heroin too, okay? Because without another way to process the horrible pain that these people have, It's an absolutely normal reaction. You know, they say that what we cannot transform, we will transmit. And pain is one of those things that if we don't know how to address it and how to deal with it, we're going to just try to shut it out any way we can. So society trains us that there are some good addictions. So, you know, what about these people that like work really hard and all they do is work and they have a really successful business and they have tons of money and they have 3 houses and a boat and all these cars and everything, right? It is very possible those people are just workaholic addicts, but our society rewards them because this is capitalism. They may be just playing out a scenario all day long where they are running from their emotions. And there is a cost to that too, because a lot of these people are unfortunately not able to be present for their children or their families, which is why so many very successful men, you know, and women now, because there's many more women reaching the CEO suite, are unable to maintain healthy familial relationships. Why? Because the addiction is taking up too much of their brain space. When you calm the central nervous system down, you feel less of a drive to do those behaviors that are addictive because you're able to deal with the pain in a more constructive fashion. It doesn't automatically get rid of the pain. It just doesn't delete whatever caused you to have the addiction. It just gives you an opportunity to pause and say, do I want to do that? You know, what's the best thing for me to do right now? And it really just helps you to become present. And addiction is basically, there's no me there. There's the feeling, and then there's the reaction to the feeling immediately. There's no me in the middle getting in the way to prevent you from doing that thing that hurts you. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I have a lot to think about.
Yeah. Okay.
Like so it could be like a pattern interrupt essentially.
It
gives you the space.
It gives you the tool, yes, just like with meditation. Okay, so neurofeedback basically is meditation on super steroids, and it gives you the ability to be present during the meditation. Because what happens is people that have trauma and addictions can't sit still long enough to meditate. So what happens is when you do the neurofeedback, it calms your nervous system and allows you actually for the first time to be able to sit down. Why don't you come back up for a second, all right?
So you can be with self better.
Say that to everybody.
So the light bulb went off. I think what Raph is saying, or what I heard anyway, is that the neurofeedback allows you to be with self for long enough to course correct and make a different choice. So then you can evolve instead of continuously replaying harmful behaviors.
Now
that's phenomenal. You know what's cool too when you hear it is it really makes me see how important the nervous system is to our humanism, and how maybe just knowing that, having the knowledge of how to calm your nervous system. I know I do a lot of breathwork techniques, and I recently moved from doing Wim Hof style with the open mouth to a closed mouth nose style, which was much easier on my nervous system. And what I noticed when I would do the nose breathing, my meditative states in my breath holds were much less about coming back to my body and getting like, you know, I'm out of that anxiety zone, or about actually sitting with self, because my nervous system was so calm through the entire breath practice. And I wasn't like using my body and like really amping up my nervous system, whereas more calmly allowing the breath to come in and fall out. And then when the last fallout was, and I'd have no air in my lungs, when I'd be in that state, it's really calm, like just really like you can feel yourself being a student. Like I can feel there's no need to worry almost. Like I don't have to worry about the fact that there's no worry. That's basically the best way to put it. So it's such a great thing to hear how our nervous system, it's what I'm trying to say is it's so awesome to get these bits of knowledge, because it opens the antenna in my brain. Now the antenna is open in my brain to understand how important, even in a moment, understanding that my nervous system's at play right now. It's working. So if I'm not paying attention to it, it might run awry and I might go do some things and I'm not ready for. So just the knowledge of being able to catch the nervous system in moments before it gets to the mind, and allows the mind to go into that, just that washing machine of whatever survival programs are built into there. Just that knowledge is such a safety for so many people. So many people.
You bring up a great point, Joe, and I want everybody to do an exercise with me right now, very, very fast one. I want you to take a breath in just through your nose and feel where the air goes. Just a short breath in through your nose and feel where the air goes. I'll do it with you. Ready? Could you feel it go up through your sinuses and kind of like to the sides of your head when you did that? Could you feel that? Now I want you to take a breath, only pinch your nose and take it only through your mouth. Could you feel like almost a little bit like of a constriction that happened and like a little bit of a panic?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So mouth breathing is actually a condition that prevents us from actualizing. They even use the term mouth breather for people that are not evolved. Okay. And there are actual studies of people that have sleep apnea on how, you know, they lose IQ points, they can't function the rest of the day. I read a book on breath work a while back and on breathing. And ever since then, and this is going to sound completely crazy, I put medical tape over my mouth when I go to sleep so that I cannot breathe through my mouth. And I have never gotten deeper sleep or woken more refreshed. You can't snore, so you can't wake yourself up. So you literally sleep deeper and you get into those deep REM and restorative low delta states where you produce human growth hormone for body repair. And I'm telling you, I feel like I'm getting younger doing it, you know?
I totally agree with that. Any nights I actually can be aware, I am aware of the nights that I've slept with my mouth closed versus my mouth open. Those nights that I sleep with my mouth closed I wake feeling great. I don't have that little edge on me at all.
You don't have to tape it, by the way. They make little straps that you can kind of put on to keep your mouth on.
I don't think tape would work good over the mustache. That might be a little bit tough.
Yeah, right? Well, you know what? Just pull the hairs up and over.
Good idea.
Tie them together.
I know. If I had any left up here, I'd do it.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Oh, man. Does anybody else have any questions? Because this is phenomenal. And I know we got a little bit more time, just a couple more minutes. So if anybody's got any more questions, I would love to let you pick Raf's brain. Anybody in the room, too, opposite me, pipe up.
Oh, we have a question. Come on up. Come on up. All right, I'll repeat it.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
Did you say this once?
With
Feedback, this whole test. So like to do like a session.
Oh, for a session. Okay. So there's different ways to get into neurofeedback. You can either do a block of sessions, or you can do one session at a time, or you can actually get the system. I can rent the system to you and your family for a month's period of time. And, you know, without getting into pricing, it can range, like if for one session in the office can be $100, but if you do a monthly rental, you can get the cost down to $10 per session. And, you know, if you've got a few people that want to kind of get in on it together. And I always encourage people to, if you're a family, especially a family with a child that has ADD or ADHD, if one person in the family needs neuro training, they probably all do, because we don't grow up in a vacuum.
Me and Mike are looking at each other. We have kids with ADD.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
I know, me too.
Look, I had terrible ADD. And you know what? I've read a lot of books on ADD, and ADD is actually a perfectly normal reaction to growing up in a dangerous world. Actually, the ADD people in the tribe, when we were running along the grasslands and hunter-gatherers, were the ones that heard the tiger first and alerted the tribe that danger was around the corner. It is a natural instinct to survive and to be alert. So we just try to train it out of us because we're supposed to be taught to sit in one job in a factory or in an office cubicle and doing boring, repetitive tasks all day long. So they try to train our natural instinct out of us. ADD is not a thing. I get passionate about this because I remember my kid when he was 6 years old taking the pills. I'm going to get emotional. And he would say, "Daddy, my stomach feels bad." And then his eyes would go blank. And he always had dark circles under his eyes, and like they could never get the medication right. They tried 6 different medications, and I would just lose my kid as soon as he took that pill. He wouldn't eat lunch. He would never eat lunch, and then he would come home and he would be ravenous, and then he would crash. He would get the crash from the drugs, and I don't know. It's wrong. It's wrong. We stick our kids with these diagnoses because we want them to fit in a world that we created that we didn't even create. It was created for us, and that's all I'll say about that.
Damn. That was, yeah, I agree with all of that, Raph. 100-fold on that, man. That's heavy. I mean, it's heavy. And I agree, man, that's that antenna. The ADD is the antenna that's been developed. That's what it is. It's a heightened antenna, and it's there to protect. And I think if we start viewing things like that a little bit and stop, like to your point, not to get this into an agenda-based conversation, but if we can stop pushing things into this unnatural human rule versus natural law life, I think if we can get back to natural law, I think we'll start seeing people will celebrate things like that a lot more. So
agreed.
That was, we've cultivated some energy today, Raph. I think so. Kristen, I don't know you, I'm sure you can hear me in there. I'm so grateful for you, Raph. I think you're on the leading edge, my man. I really do. I think this is a leading edge technology. And I think a lot of what you're doing is the beginnings of a new way to be human and a new way to interact with one another and to understand what it is to live in these bodies, so we can begin to understand one another and stop trying to like fit everybody into a box that's exactly the same, so that way we stop having these problems in the world. You know what I mean?